Hi, I'm your host, Beth Renoff, and this is Are You Afraid of the Talk? Join me as I shine a light on the difficult conversations we keep in the dark. Follow the journeys of everyday people as they share their struggles with talking about different topics, from personal problems to societal issues. My hope is to get to the root of what holds people back from initiating these discussions and normalize these conversations by having them. So, are you afraid of the talk?
Hi, and welcome to Are You Afraid of the Talk? This is a podcast where we shine a light on conversations we keep in the dark. Today we have Alex, 39 from Westchester, joining us. And Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Alex. I live in Westchester. Lived here for about 5 years. Grew up in Massachusetts, and I have two sons and a husband and a dog.
Awesome. And what do you do?
I work in marketing at LinkedIn.
Oh, cool. So if you could go backwards or forwards in time, if you had a time machine, where would you go? And like what time period would you go to? Where would you go? Who would you be with? And just a little fun icebreaker to kind of get people to see where your
Sure.
mind's at.
Yeah, I definitely would go back in time. It's like a lot of different places, but maybe something that jumped into my head, I would go back in time to, I want to say I was like 12. And
Mm-hmm.
I was on a cruise with my family. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. I remember stopping in Jamaica, going on a waterfall, just like a happy time and happy memories. And so I think for me, most things would involve going back in time. So I would have, extra time with my mom who passed away. So that kind of jumped out to me. I have like a nice picture of all of us standing under a waterfall in Jamaica. So go back to that
Aw,
moment.
that's so nice. And, with the difficulties of losing your mom, I think that's why the topic we kind of wanted to talk about today. But I always like to start with like, what is something like easy to talk about? Because like you introduced yourself, it's my family,
Yeah.
my work,
Yeah.
So what's easy for you to talk about?
Yeah, definitely like my family or, um, work, what's going on at work, kind of the day-to-day stuff when people, say, how are you? I'm good. The family is good. Kind of what we're doing at the moment. So I guess like the more like surface level things.
Mm-hmm. And what about that do you think is easier to talk about?
Um, So I guess that's more kind of like the day to day of what's going on rather than like internal feelings. It's kind of like what's on the
Mm-hmm.
surface.
Mm-hmm. So it's not as vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay. And now, what's something that's difficult for you to talk about, or like you feel like is a topic that isn't welcome necessarily, or it just feels like weird to bring up?
Yeah. That's definitely like internal feelings or things like, maybe how I'm actually feeling about something, things that like show my vulnerability or kind of my anxieties and stuff like that. Definitely have a harder time talking about that or kind of, being more open and emotional about like how I'm feeling internally.
Hmm. And I guess that leads us to the conversation that you want to have, or you're not as readily like able to have.
Mhm.
And what's that?
So I guess, really talking about how my mom passed away when I was 25 and just like, I think, how that internally has impacted me and kind of also even like led kind of to some fears that I have also kind of as I'm getting older. And then also definitely like, you know, ways in which I feel like, maybe I haven't fully processed my grief or, I always tell myself, life is short. So, like, why am I worrying about these stupid, mundane things, but then actually still worry about them? I kind of wish I didn't have to.
So it sounds like how the grief process has impacted how you've developed,
Yeah.
because 25 is like young to lose a parent, you know, and you picture your life with like your mom as a grandma, and you know how grief is not just like a set process, like when someone dies, like it starts and then it ends in a few months when you're done grieving. I think we can see how the grief process is cyclical, and kind of with each milestone that comes with you as you age, you know, and not having your mom there, you know. And I think it probably started before she even passed away because she was sick, you know. So, you know, what's that like?
Yeah, it's definitely like, yeah, I definitely agree that I think it's like, you know, people kind of just assume you go through this period of grief and then it's easier, but I think like everyone grieves differently. You know, it takes time, and it's like it's not something that ever goes away. It's definitely there with you. And I would say also like with people kind of assuming, you know, so it's like, you know, now it's my mom passed away like 13 years ago. You know, people don't really ask me about it or whatever, but definitely like, you know, because it hopefully this is making sense. Like,
Yeah, it is.
because they think it's, you know, this process, but it's like for me, like I would like people to ask about it more, or like to check in more, or to me, like recognize that like obviously like Mother's Day and things are hard. And it's kind of just like it's something that um never leaves. It's something like, you know, you're always dealing with it.
Yeah. So, you know, that's so hard. And what stops you from ever like saying anything to anybody? Like, you know, I'm still grieving. I still am missing my mom. Like, it would be nice to hear from people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like even me,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't know. And I also feel lucky that like I have my sister because, you know, I'll be able to talk about it with her. But yeah, I think also like I don't take offense to it. I just think like it's not on people's minds. And I also like don't like to be the center of attention or attention on myself. So
Mm-hmm. And what is the grief process for you? So it's like different for everybody. What does it look like for you?
yeah, I think like now it's kind of just like, you know, it's something like I'll think about my mom every day, and I'll, you know, get sad, and I more just like feel sad also for her that she's not here to experience, you know, me growing up and having grandkids. But I think it's more like, you know, I'm not crying every day, which definitely, you know, happened a lot in the beginning, but it's more um I'll kind of like have like pings of memories, or I'll get the thought like, oh, I'm going to call my mom, and then like not able to. And it's just kind of like a sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually in the supermarket the other day, and I decided that I was going to buy grapefruits, and it was so weird. I like picked up a grapefruit, and then the feeling of it, like I just got this like weird feeling, and it just reminded me of my mom, like this weird like connection thing, because I feel like she liked grapefruits, but just like the touch and feeling of it like reminded me of having grapefruits in my house. And then I actually mentioned this to my mom's best friend, who I'm very close with, and she's like, "That's so funny. Like grapefruits remind me of your mom. I feel like she would always eat them." So there's kind of
Yeah.
like moments of these memories coming back, but I think it's more like you learn to live with it. It's just kind of like, you know, a sadness.
Yeah. And it sounds like too, like it's so mixed because you think of that memory and it's a positive
Yeah.
memory,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like joy, but at the same time it's like this loss and sadness
Yeah.
that you can't go enjoy a grapefruit with your mom.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like I'll hear, you know, people complaining about their moms, and it's like,
Mhm.
you know, they don't mean anything by it, but I'm just like, oh, I wish I could even like, you know, complain. And then also I feel like I do know a lot of people who like don't really have these, you know, nice close relationships with their moms. So I'm like, okay, at least like I did have that, but
Mhm.
you know, obviously not as long.
Right. You know, and that's something you live with forever, and it's like going to carry on. So it's like, what does that grief process look like continuously throughout your life?
Yeah. I don't know. And I guess also like another thing that's like impacted me is, so my mom passed away when she was 57. So I
Mhm.
also like, I don't know what she would have looked like, now. I
Mhm.
don't know what she'll look like when she's older. And I feel like often like as a female, you're gonna look to your mom and like that will give you some kind of vision of like how you're gonna look at that age. And so also because my mom was 57 when she passed away, I kind of just picture like, okay, that's going to happen to me. Like I'm going to get cancer. Something's going to happen to me. And I think that's like hopefully an irrational fear. But as I was saying before, I'm also like, okay, I could have like, I can't do the math. Like, I don't know, 19 years or whatever left to live. So I'm like, why am I wasting my time like on these stupid things? And like, I
Mhm.
sometimes wish I could more just focus on like my family and the thing that matters and kind of push all those other mundane things out.
Well, I think you bring up like a few really good
Mhm.
points, but it's like it doesn't matter the trauma you've experienced or losing someone really important. Like, yes, it puts things in perspective,
Mhm.
but it's also like you're a human being. You're going to have things that bother
Yeah.
you,
Yes, yes.
But I think there's this pressure when you have lost someone that you're supposed to have learned this great life lesson from it and
Mhm,
then just be perfect for the rest of your life and live it to the fullest.
mhm.
And I think there's a pressure that you can't just be a human being anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I think it's totally understandable you'd have a fear and like count down how many like years you have
yeah,
left,
yeah.
and your mom also, like Alex and I have been friends for a very long time.
Mhm,
She's been my best friend since like the minute we met. And
mhm.
so actually, we have a really cool story. Our
Mhm,
parents went to college together. Our moms were best friends in
mhm,
college. They were the same major. They were both married really young.
mhm,
And I guess they lived in this building for young couples who were in college.
mhm,
And they both, I think my parents got their cats because of your
mhm.
parents. And then they
Mhm,
they graduated, they moved, had families, and kind of lost touch. But then our senior years of high school, my best friend at the time was on vacation and randomly met Alex's mom. She was petting her dog, and she was just like, "Oh, I'm a senior." She's like, "Oh," and Alex's mom is like, "Oh, my daughter's a senior,"
mhm.
and she's like, "Oh, where's she going?" She's like, "University of Delaware." She's like, "Oh my god, my best friend is got in there early too," and she's like, "Oh, where are you from?" She's like, "Livingston, New Jersey," and she's like, "Oh." You know, my good friend from college is from there too, Wendy Renoff. She's like, "Oh my god, her daughter is the one I'm talking about." So we like had this amazing. It's like we had a better story of how we met than like how we've met our
Oh,
partners.
definitely. I
So
know.
I feel like you are my soulmate,
I
and
know, it was meant to be.
yeah, so we met like fast forward and we took a tour of Delaware, and I feel like we've been best friends since that moment. So,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
knowing Alex's mom, she was a redhead, so most 57-year-olds or anyone in their 50s starts to get gray. Not one gray on her
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
I feel like
I don't
she's
know
lived
that
the
that's gonna be me, though. I already have a lot. I don't know. I hope.
yeah, but I mean, and your mom's also like a high, like she looked so young. So it's
Mhm,
like picturing yourself, that must be difficult too, because it's like you have to live up to this image and what your mom,
mhm,
looked like, how she
mhm.
was. So I think that's really hard too, and just, I mean, I think you're a very preventative person. So
Mhm.
I think your fears are normal, but like
Yeah.
just even seeing how the grief impacts that is like,
Mhm.
am I going to be sick? And
Yeah.
what's it like to like, because cancer is genetic, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't like prevent some of it,
Mhm.
but what is it like to like sit with that knowledge?
Yeah. No, I feel like it's like scary, but and I like This is probably even though like before my mom passed away, I feel like I've always been a bit of a hypochondriac. I've definitely like gotten better in my older years, but I'm
Mhm.
kind of always just like having in my head that like I'm getting some form of cancer. It's just a matter of like when, which is
Mhm.
not the best mindset. But it's like
Mhm.
would I have thought that even if this hadn't happened to my mom, that definitely probably impacts it. But
Right.
and then it kind of all just stems back to the fact that I'm like, it's like I feel like I know more than others, like how short and precious life can be. So it's like I really want to try to focus more on like what I care about and the present and all of that. But hard to get caught up. But definitely, working on it.
Well, that is something you can work on, and
Yeah.
mindset something you can work
Mhm.
on. And I think people don't realize is like the more you tell yourself something negative, it those words and thoughts have power. They have
Mhm.
intuition, they have
Yeah.
energy. So
Yeah.
if you are constantly telling yourself, I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get sick, you probably are. It might not
Mhm.
be cancer, but it's going to be something else,
Yeah. Definitely.
you know?
Yeah.
And in the same way, the more positive you can
Mhm.
talk to yourself,
Mhm.
like the higher your vibration raises. And that is actually a protector for you,
Okay.
And I think people don't really, and this is like something I'm into because
Yeah.
I'm chronically ill and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to, get healthy. And if you go to a doctor, it's like take medicine, like
Mhm.
exercise, eat from the food pyramid. Yeah, that's not really like going to work because everybody's individual. But they don't talk about how our thoughts, how our feelings, like not acknowledging your feelings. So we talk about, how like these basic things with a doctor, but we don't talk about how energy impacts that. How, if you have stuck energy, stuck emotions, and maybe in your grief, you didn't properly process emotions. And if you're like not so easily able to be vulnerable, like emotions, I think are hard for you to talk about, so it's like working on that vulnerability so that you could feel everything, you could process everything, so that maybe these fears you can see them as irrational, right? Even though there
Definitely.
is some proof, it doesn't mean that you're 1000% gonna get it.
Yeah. No, definitely. And yeah, and I would say like, granted now it's been lost track, like 13 years since my mom passed away, but it's like I don't actually know that I necessarily ever really grieved. And not that there's a right
Mhm.
way to grieve or not, but maybe like I'd have different feelings on things if I did, but I'm very much someone like I don't like people to see me cry or stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I think, I definitely probably always tried to put on a brave face, which I think was helpful for me in a sense. But,
Mhm.
who knows if maybe that could have impacted things.
Well, I think we have survival skills that help us, and I think it was exactly what you needed them because you
Mhm,
had to get through and live and
mhm,
be a human being,
mhm.
and that's really hard. And whatever, it's not like you started abusing drugs, which, okay, like if that's what happened, okay, but putting on a brave face for
Yeah.
people is okay. It's just, does it serve you anymore?
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah. Maybe not. I think it's also just like I've said, like now it's at the point where it happened so long ago that it's not for me, it's always present, but like for others it's not. And obviously, now like living in the suburbs and having a community and people like these are people that have only ever known me like since my the mom passed away. And
Hmm.
um I'm kind of used to me not talking about it, but I definitely think like for the friends that I've had for a long time that knew my mom that like know the dates of when she passed away or do even recognize for me like Mother's Day
Hmm.
is hard. Definitely, appreciate that. And I think also like, when people pass away, I think it's like a thing where it can be awkward. Like you don't know what to say to someone. And so sometimes you shy away. And I even, a few friends from college, I just am not friends with anymore because they just almost like didn't know. Um, I feel like they didn't know how to acknowledge it. So,
Hmm.
like, I think sometimes it's also hard for people. They don't know what to say, whatever. And even, so many years later.
Absolutely. And I think what happens is they put their comfort before yours.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one knows it. Nothing you say is going to make someone feel better about someone passing. It's just being there and being like, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And I'm I'm sorry you're in pain, and if there's something I can do, please let me know because I want to be here for you. I
Yeah.
just don't know exactly how. And I think
Yeah.
I don't know why that's really hard for people, but it really is. And I think especially when we were at 25 years old, like I don't know that everybody had the emotional intelligence, but
Definitely.
to be there for your friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And I think one thing that you did really well is people who weren't there for you, you didn't try and put their feelings before yours. You're just like, okay, now I know who my true friends are.
Definitely. Yeah. Weeds out the people it's not kind of worth the effort with.
Right. And I think sometimes big life events kind of show you that.
Definitely. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you ever find, I know you have your sister, but are there other people who you've met along the way who've lost parents where it's something you can like bond over and like kind of understand each other in a way that maybe other friends can't?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I even know, like, when my mom passed away, I kind of tried to look for, like, weren't there any support groups of people kind of going through similar things? I think I read this book. It's like Motherless Daughters or something that was helpful, but I never really found like that kind of like community support. And then I don't know, I would say like over the years, like I've met other people whose parents have passed away where it's like I kind of have always been looking like, is there, have I, is this someone I could talk to about my feelings, whatever. But interestingly, I feel like the people that I know, whether it's like guys, girls, like it's not something I feel like even they're like open to talking about, if that makes sense.
So why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think everyone just like deals with it in like a different way. And it's maybe kind of like, they're gone, like what is there to say, and maybe it's different when it's very like in the moment, but when years and years have gone by, I think maybe just because a lot of people deal with it, it's not something that they're looking to talk about.
Right. Well, I think also, and I think this can be true with like any big event that brings up a lot of intense emotion, is like we feel like if we unleash or uncap that emotion, it's going to just take over and we're never going to be okay again.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Easier to kind of keep it bottled up.
But I think there's benefits in being able to at least acknowledge for yourself what you're feeling, right? Because, again, like this grief didn't end, so do you think maybe just like not allowing yourself to feel some of the emotion has impacted, like I think you're someone who experiences anxiety. Do you think that has kind of intensified the anxiety because you've kind of shut down a part of yourself?
I guess it would be hard to fully say, but I think that maybe could be some of it, and definitely, yeah, because kind of try to keep a lot of it bottled up, and it's like at this point, it's more just like a sadness, that I feel when I think about my mom. But yeah, and I try though, at least like with both of my boys. I'm actually sitting in Will's bedroom right now, and there's like right over there he has a picture of my mom. We talk about Grandma Karen all the time. Harry, like not that long ago, said something like, I don't remember exactly. I don't know if you had a dream or he's like, oh, Grandma Karen gave that to me or she told me that. So at least kind of trying to like incorporate it into their lives. But yeah, I would say, definitely maybe keeping it bottled up and stuff. And maybe like, I don't know that I fully did ever grieve as much as I could have. Like, I think it could, maybe impact my anxiety and kind of how I deal with other things.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you incorporate her into your kids' lives and like tell stories about her.
Definitely. Yeah. And they both have like her blue eyes and her
Mhm.
coloring. So it's nice. And even like it was my birthday recently. And I feel like, there's a bunch of years where on my birthday it's been like unseasonably nice and
Mhm.
warm weather. So that happened this year. So I was always like, oh, this is like a gift from my mom. Then on the flip
Mhm.
side, for my sister's birthday, like last week, it was gross and raining. And like, well, but then I met my sister for lunch the next day, and it was a beautiful day. So I said, you know what,
Mhm.
like maybe mom could only make one really nice day, and she wanted to make sure it was the day we were going to be together.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
yeah, and who knows if any of that's true, but it's kind of like nice and comforting.
Yeah. Do you feel like she's with you sometimes? Like, and I guess that's kind of what you were just saying.
Yeah, yeah, definitely with that, or like when I like had this feeling about the grapefruit,
Mhm.
or definitely I feel like there's like signs and things. So I do, and I haven't, but I like have always really wanted to go to a medium.
Mhm.
But then I'm kind of like I don't know, like it scares me a little bit because it's like what are they gonna say? And then I was like, what if like she says something like bad that she doesn't like about my life or something like that. I don't know. So it's kind
Mm.
of like it scared me a little bit, but I kind of like to believe in that stuff.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting that what you're fearful of is your mom judging how your
Mhm.
life turned out.
Yeah, which I don't really think she would be, but I do think there are obviously things about my life that I think maybe would have been different if she was here. But at the same time, obviously to me, like I feel like 25 is young. Like I had already met my husband at that point. Like I had a job, lived in the city. Like she initially got cancer when I was in like seventh grade.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, it sucks, but thank God, I had like 11 more years with her versus if I was in seventh grade and lost her. Like I do think the trajectory of my life probably who knows, could be a lot different. I think I could have had a lot harder of a time than, being a little bit older.
Right. That's a very true
Yeah.
statement. How do you think your life would be different if she was still here?
I feel like so I was going to major in graphic design and remember in
Mhm.
college, I didn't just because of the way Delaware was. So even after college, I had gotten a job. We worked together
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
but she was encouraging me, like she was trying to find me graphic design courses to do and all of
Mhm.
this stuff. And then she kind of got sick, put it in the back burner. So, I work in marketing and I like it. It's not, my dream. But like maybe things like that. And then also even like maybe I think that maybe like her and my dad maybe would have moved to New York, like
Mhm.
closer, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, what stops you from taking a graphic design course?
I'm just like the ship has sailed on that. It's not yeah, the ship has sailed. So no.
Well, do you think like initially like you didn't go that route because it was painful because it was attached to your mom?
Maybe, or it's just kind of like I feel like it would have been a lot of effort to do that and change things, and I wasn't unhappy like in my job at the time, and
Mhm.
I definitely am not unhappy now. I just like I don't know if I could have my dream job, I would honestly like work in a library or work in the library, like helping people pick up books and reading kids stories. But that's
Hey,
not
well,
realistic. Yeah,
maybe it is in like 10 years, right?
maybe one
Or,
day.
like, and
Yeah,
I think like our lives aren't fixed. Like, you still have your whole life ahead of you.
definitely.
You can
Yeah.
make career changes.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, but no, I do like my job, but it's kind of, it's
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody's really in their dream job
yeah.
except people who really like pursued
Wow.
it,
Yes, yes,
like,
yes.
I mean, I'm certainly not a Broadway actress and dancer, so
Could have been.
I don't
Yeah,
know about that. But, like I think our dreams change as we get
yeah.
older with our experience, and maybe also you were like going into it because that's what your mom did
Mhm.
versus what you wanted to do.
Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, and I think like subconsciously, her and like, maybe fully not grieving all of it definitely like impacts my life in certain ways.
Like how?
Just like, yeah, I would say again, kind of like what I've said, like the fears of like getting sick or not living to a certain age, or even kind of just like being like private about my feelings and stuff like that.
So how do you work on that?
I see a therapist, which is helpful. And a lot of it is like, I feel like I've worked on kind of, it's almost like not running away from my emotions, but kind of being more present and aware. Like, okay, if, like if something's bothering me or I'm stressed about something, a lot of it, I also try to look like take a break, stop and figure out like, how's this like making me feel? And like, it's hurting my stomach. I'm tensing up and kind of like, what are kind of the other things impacting maybe how I'm looking at of things. And a big thing for me is like working on not giving a shit what other people think or whatever. And I think a big part of it is like, I'm very much a person where I want everyone, to like me, and I don't want to say things that are going to upset people, but it's kind of also like, I'm not in anyone else's head. So if I say something, I have no idea what they're like thinking or how it's impacting them. So it's like a little bit different than my mom, but like kind of the things I try to work on.
Well, I like that, and
Yeah.
I think why we don't have any control over what people think, right? Or what filter or perception they're internalizing things from. So it's really hard. And if you can think of that, like when you are anxious, is like, but I don't have control over what they think. So what about this is really bothering me? And my guess is that you're probably judging yourself. And I feel like I say this like almost every day, but I think the fear of judgment of others really comes from ourselves and our negative core beliefs. And even just like talking about your mom is like, maybe like you don't feel that you're living up to your potential or you're not like good enough, and maybe that is where some of this comes from, is like, I'm never going to live up to her expectation because I'm not good enough. People aren't going to like me because I'm not good enough. And it's like, how do we challenge that negative thought? So stuff like grief, stuff like fitting into a social circle, right? Is not coming to us like it's a threat for our lives. Because I think that's why anxiety gets so spiked.
Definitely. Yeah. So, and it's kind of interesting how like your upbringing and your experience and, losing people and stuff kind of like all plays into that. And then your kind of outlook in the world.
But I think that's important to remember, like when you are feeling judged, is like that person who you think is judging you, all their experiences and losses and successes filter how they're going to internalize. So it isn't the same as yours. So your fears are just that, they're fears. Right?
Yeah.
And you were able to come on here and talk about something that's really vulnerable and scary to talk about. So you do a good job of handling vulnerability. It's just saying like, why in these moments does it feel scary?
Definitely. Yeah. And definitely, I think for me, like, it's not on people's mind to ever like ask me about my mom or whatever. But like, I, love when people ask me about her, I can talk about her, like the reasons to bring her up. So I feel like, and in that sense, I'm kind of keeping her memory alive.
Yeah. And like, so let's say, okay, me, for example, how often would you want me to ask? I think it's like a hard thing. It's like, does it get annoying if someone's asking you every week? Or...
Yeah, and it's no. And I think it's like, it's not like, I don't expect you to just, call me in 3 days, "Alex, like, what are you thinking about your mom today?" Like, it's not
Right.
realistic,
Right.
but more just like when I see you, if things come up
Mhm.
in conversation or like if
Mhm.
you're talking about your mom or something, like it's
Mhm.
more when it's organic.
Mhm.
When it's organic, or definitely, for people acknowledging like Mother's Day is
Mhm.
hard and all of that. And I'm not like a huge social media poster, but I do sometimes like to post like on her birthday or whatever, because I'm
Mhm.
just like, it's just a nice way, of me making sure like people are remembering her, which obviously the people that like, knew her and were close with her, I know, kind of are thinking about her a lot. And like her close friends, will always mention to me, "I think about your mom all the time," and all of that stuff. And like
Mhm.
that's nice. So I think it's more just like organically, if it were to come up, definitely, not expecting you to just call me and ask me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I'm not calling you all the time, "Beth, how's your mom?" Like, whatever. It's
Right.
more like in conversation.
Right. And like you bring up like kind of important role that you also have to step into is like you're the keeper of your mom's
Mhm.
memory and keeping her alive. And
Yeah.
like, how is it to have that responsibility?
Yeah. I guess I don't look at it as like a responsibility, but
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's just like, I think also like it's for me, telling myself like, this makes me feel better when I'm
Mhm.
occasionally will post about her or will mention her or whatever. So it's kind of just like something that also brings me joy in a sense.
So it sounds like it's a coping skill for
Yeah,
you.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any coping skills for you that worked for you? Because obviously everybody's different, but maybe
Mhm.
someone who's listening has lost a parent and hasn't dealt with it in a way that feels good for them. And maybe they're just looking for something that helps. Was there
Yeah.
something that was really helpful for you?
Yeah. I would say definitely like having like my sister and my dad to lean on, and talking about her with them. And then, talking about my mom with her close friends, seeing her close friends is always kind of a nice reminder. But I think also, just knowing that like we said, everyone grieves differently, and sadly, like it's not something that is ever going to go away. I guess like the pain of it gets hurts a little bit less over time, but it's like it is something that's always going to be with you. But
Hmm.
you just need to kind of like, look at all of the good things that you had, and then I think like figuring out how can you kind of like keep bringing that person to life, or make sure that you're kind of embodying their qualities. But I think definitely like talking about it and then leaning on it with people that are close, people that knew the loved one and stuff like that is helpful. And like I said, I read this book. It was like Motherless Daughters or something like that. I found that useful, just to know, okay, there's other people out there that are going through this. And then also kind of trying to look at the glass half full. Like, I was 25, but my mom first got sick, when I was 12. So it's like it could have been very different. And it was like a gift that I had, like the extra time with her.
Hmm. So it's really, it sounds like mindset,
Mhm.
reaching out
Yes.
and definitely having your support network there
Yeah.
and not feeling badly to reach out,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, talking about her, keeping the person alive.
Mhm.
And I guess also what we're talking about is acceptance and like
Mhm.
what did that look like for you if you can even put that into words?
Just accepting that this is the reality.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess that's just something like over time, you accept. I don't, at this point, it's been a while, but I feel like for me, I actually, so when my mom passed away, Dave and I lived just for 1 year. We had moved in like maybe a few months before she was born, in this apartment on like 80th Street. And
Mhm.
I like I have like a few memories from there, but I really have like no recollection of living there. So for me, I
Mhm.
almost feel like I like blocked that period out of my life, which is kind of a bit odd, but maybe that's how I dealt with it. But I think it's just, like you're not choosing to accept it, but over time, it becomes the normal, and you kind of learn to live your life without that person there.
Right. Well, the brain does that as a safety
Mm-hmm.
protection.
Yeah.
And if it felt you weren't safe
Mm-hmm.
and it's too painful for you, it's going to
Yeah.
block those memories. So it's not weird. It just
Mm-hmm.
shows how much your body like actually
Yeah.
supports you and works
Interesting.
for you
Yeah.
and is very purposeful in
Mm-hmm.
everything it does. Like your body is just so smart, and it can feel weird because you don't remember, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason you don't.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So I was kind of grateful for that, kind of blocked out a
Mhm.
lot of those kind of the painful period.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you are such a good example of, you know, coping really well. Even if you don't feel you show your emotions a lot, like you've always showed up for people. It didn't change who you were. I've seen a
Mhm.
lot of people lose a parent and it just destroys them
Yeah.
and they can't function. And you, I think, because of such a good relationship, the age
Mhm.
you were at,
Mhm.
the ways you've coped, the support you had around you,
Mhm.
and the fact that like you had like a mom who really raised you really well,
Mhm.
you know.
Definitely.
So I think it's a shitty kind of situation, but you made the best of a
Mhm.
really, really crappy situation.
Definitely. Yeah. So, yeah. And then I'm like, you know what? I had 25 like great years and sucks, but it's like
Right.
I can't do anything to change it. So I can kind of just focus on, living my life and doing things that I think, my mom would be proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. And
Sure.
so if you can leave listeners with one piece of advice
Yep.
from your lived experience, what would that be?
Um, sure. So I would say it's super cliche, but just really like try as much as you can to live in the moment, to enjoy, the everyday, because I think a lot of our time is spent worrying about the future, and we really like have no control over our lives and what happens. So kind of live in the moment, appreciate your loved ones, and then also like eat the cake, have the chocolate. Like,
Yeah.
again, super cliche, but just like enjoy yourself because you really don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right. And for me, like, I guess I have a fear of someone I love dying too. So it's like, I make sure I say I love you to
Mhm.
everybody. I say it to my
Yeah,
friends, I say it to my
yeah,
family. So,
definitely.
let
Yeah,
people know how you feel about them.
definitely. Yeah, and I feel like if there's people in your life that like don't support you and don't make you feel good, and I think a lot of that mindset also comes as you get older, but like you
Hmm.
don't need them.
Yeah. You'll be okay without them. And
Definitely.
your group and circle might grow smaller, but
Mhm.
they're better quality.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes, very well said. Glad you're in my small quality group.
Yes, you too.
Right.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank
And
you for having me.
maybe we can have you back someday.
I love
But
that. Yeah, plenty of topics I can talk about. So
yeah,
happy to come anytime.
well, I hope someone has resonated with this and this has helped them in some way. And stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to shine a light on a different difficult conversation. But thanks again, Alex.
Okay.
And I will see you guys soon.